That's all great, but how do you set yourself up for successful self-directed learning? It changes a bit in that you are the one who sets the destination. You are the one who sets your learning goals, asking yourself, what do you want to learn? What do you need to learn? And in fact, your destination setting starts with your IDEP. With your IDEP, you're identifying and setting clear, specific, and attainable goals. You're not trying to master an entire huge skill set, but you are trying to drill down into the skills that will be most useful for you in your job at this moment. You are also the one who packs for the trip. So you are deciding on, or at least leading the process to find resources. You are looking at what and who, we often forget the who, so what and who do you think will be useful in helping you get there? This is often one of the most challenging parts of self-directed learning. If I don't know the skill, how am I supposed to know what resources will help me learn the skill? Well, let's talk about that. You can ask yourself too, which of these resources have you identified already, and which might you need help identifying? Even though you're driving the car, others can help you in the process. They can jump in, they can ask you where you're going, they can clarify things with you and for you, so you can ask them. You also want to ask, which resources do you already have access to, and which might you need help in getting access to? Be that a document, a course, a person. You're driving the process, but you can reach out and should reach out for help. Your packing also starts with your IDEP. We're asking you to identify resources in your IDEP so you know where to start. And your IDEP should be completed, drafted, given feedback, and finalized as much as it can be for the quarter with the help of your TU lead. So you can write down some resources and your TU lead can also add resources that they know of. And this isn't a static process. When you go through your IDEP for the first time, you should also be going back and seeing what are the resources I need now and how do I get them. Where can you look for resources? This is the big question. Well, there are 4 main places to look for resources, all with their different types of resources, a different ease of use. I'm sure you've used some of them before, others maybe you've used less. The TCB library, a great place to get resources for the skills you are targeting in your IDEP. The library is put together by PMA. MOOCs, massive open online courses, these online classes that people can take regardless of time and geography. You can join this online class. Google, we all use it. We could probably all use it more. Google's a great place to look for resources when you're learning any skill. And also YouTube. Some of us don't learn as well when we're reading a document. We really learn when we see it. And so YouTube is a great place to look for learning resources. The first place we're going to talk about is the TCB library, which is available at bit.ly/TCB library. And I hope that you have seen this before, you're looking at it regularly, but let's look at it together today. A reminder that the TCB library is especially great for PMA specific skills. Anything that is SOPs and handbooks, memos, protocols, and guidelines, bootcamp and workshop presentations, these are all going to be in that TCB library and will have very specific references to how PMA uses that skill. So let's look at the TCB library together. If you go to bit.ly/TCB library, you will see this. We have a very first page, a README, that walks you through everything about the library and how to use it. And then our second tab is specifically about TCB content tools. Like we said, the TCB library is especially great for PMA specific skills and for referring to SOPs to learn the PMA way. So for example, there's lots we can learn about ODK. What are the PMA standards and norms for different uses of ODK? Let's look at one specific skill. If you see here, we have the technical skill category, the technical skill, the skills custodian, and then we start talking about the resource itself. So what is the folder, what is the tool, and then a few different thoughts about the tool. So who developed it? Is it in progress or ready to go? What language is it available in? And a short description of the tool. Some of this you may use, some of this you might not. Just like a card catalog in a library, your first focus will be on the skill set and on the skill. So for example, if we want to look at skill set H, questionnaire pre-testing, we can scroll all the way down to skill set H. We can also click on the filter, clear everything, and then go down to skill set H and OK it. Right now that means that we are only seeing skill set H in the library. If we look at skill H1, conducting ODK form testing according to the PMA SOP, we see that in fact it points us to the ODK protocols and to two specific documents within the ODK team protocols. So if you want to learn about conducting the ODK form testing according to the PMA SOP, you could go into this Dropbox folder. So you click on the cell and it gives you the Dropbox link. And remember, we're looking for testing ODK forms because there will likely be more documents in this. So we want to go into the English, maybe into ODK, into form testing, and here we go, testing ODK forms. So we can learn the PMA SOP for testing ODK forms in this document itself. Now remember, there were so many other documents, folders, subfolders, you might have had a hard time finding it, but if you look at the skill that you're trying to learn in the TCB library, it will point you towards this. The same if we want to learn how to design and implement a field test to check the individual questions in the overall questionnaire flow according to PMA guidelines. We click on the pre-testing, we click on the SharePoint link, and we look for this specific tool. Anytime, you always have two options. You can scroll through and look for things. You can use the filters to clear and look for only what you want, sometimes even using the search box if we want to look for everything, every skill set that has to do with ODK. And also finally with a Control F, you can search specifically for different things. So if I want to learn Python, I can click Python, Control F, Python, and then I can page up and down through every time Python is specifically mentioned in this library. So for example, we can see that there is a document about how to install Python on Windows 10. If I'm just starting out, maybe that's the document for me that I can find once again through the Dropbox link. Maybe I want to look at GitHub, in which there is a tool called PMix that it's telling me is a Python tool for doing many different things, including translation management. So maybe I'm looking at learning Python for one thing, but it makes sense to also learn it for translation management. Or maybe the skill that I've targeted my IDEP is skill G2, ensuring consistent translation across the forms. Any skill that you're looking for should have at least one resource here in the TCB library. Make sure that you're looking at all of the filters, and you can go down, and even just like as a library, you can walk through the aisles. You can look at all of the different resources and see what might be useful for you. In fact, we're going to continue to add to this library in the coming weeks, so make sure you keep checking back to see what else is new and what might be useful for you when you're learning this skill. We're going to come to this later on in this course, but remember that there are skills custodians listed here as well. So in addition to the tool as a resource, you also have the person as a resource. If you want to learn about following PMA protocols to identify, communicate, and correct data quality issues during data collection, you can look at different tools. You can also contact Monica and Varsha and say, I'm looking to learn about this specific thing, or I have challenges with this part of that skill. Can you help me with that? And they can get on a call with you, they can send you a document, they can look over something you're working on. These skills custodians are also in themselves resources for you. Okay, it's time to try out the TCB library. So pause this video to give you time to try out the library. First, select 2 skills that you've targeted in your IDEP, and then go to the TCB library, bit.ly/TCB library, and use that library, filtering, searching, just scrolling through to identify at least one interesting resource for each of the 2 skills that you've targeted. Take note of the skills custodian for each as well. So at the end of this, you're going to have at least 2 resources, one for each of the skills, and 1 or 2 skills custodians, because they may be the same for both skills, in which case you'd only have 1. Then finally, share the resources you've found with another learner on your team. And when you've gone through all of this, you can hit the play button to continue this video. MOOCs are also great places to learn any of these skills, but in general, they're good for more general skill sets. Or if you already have a course recommendation from someone who really knows what you want to learn and knows the skill well, because there are so many MOOCs out there, you probably want to look around a bit, ask around a bit to understand that you are taking the right course for that MOOC. So there are many different platforms for massive open online courses, MOOCs. edX is one run by Harvard. The Khan Academy, started by a single man teaching his nephew. Open Education Europa, which also has some great French courses. And then 3 that have been commercialized in the past few years. So they're great. They also have mostly fee-based courses. So Coursera, Udemy, and Udacity also have handfuls of courses for you to learn. How do you select a course? It's good to look at cost, quality, logistics, and level. So as I'd mentioned, some MOOCs are free and some have a cost. Some are free, but you would have to pay for a certificate at the end, and some have free trials that will give you a free course or that will give you free access for a week or a month. So check on the cost of the courses when you're searching. Quality as well is important. Anyone can publish a MOOC, so don't just assume that because it's a course online, it's a high quality course. Make sure that it seems quality. When you have doubts, reach out to someone who knows MOOCs better, maybe who knows the skill better, to tell you, yep, this is a good course, or maybe not such a great course. Look at the logistics as well. Make sure that the MOOC that you're looking at meets your logistical needs, that you can access the materials with your internet connection, that any type of video might stream, that you can download anything the course asks you to download. Also check that your time commitment is reasonable. So sometimes a MOOC will ask you to do 10, 15 hours of work a week. If so, and you're working full time, that might be challenging for you. Many MOOCs are also shorter. They're 1-2 hours a week or 1-2 hours total. And finally, check to make sure that the MOOC is not live. If you have the time to make a commitment for live classes, great. Most of us don't. So think about if it's a deferred MOOC that you need to do an assignment for the day or for the week, but at any time of that day or week, that's probably better suited for you. And finally, check on the level. Make sure that the MOOC meets your learning needs, that it starts at your level, and that it teaches the appropriate skills. Try the MOOC out. See if it works. Feel free to just drop it if you feel like it's not at the right skill level, the time commitment is too much, the quality just isn't there. Try it out and drop it. Also, it's really key to ask for recommendations. You can find so many of these MOOCs, but you might have a colleague or a connection through PMA or another professional circle who might have already done a MOOC, and you might want to follow that. Finally, think about taking the class with a buddy. It is proven that more people complete these online classes, these MOOCs, when they take the class with someone else. Looking at YouTube, there are so many videos on YouTube. For the work that you do with PMA, YouTube is probably good for general introductions to ideas and also for learning or troubleshooting specific skills. It's less structured than a course. It's probably less about getting from knowing nothing to getting to knowing a bit, but it helps with the basics. It helps further up. So think about when you might use YouTube. Again, anyone can post on YouTube. This video might go up on YouTube. So think about when you're selecting a video, how to select the best video for your learning needs. Think about which video seems to be at your level based on the title and the description. Check out the number of views. Check out the date. The older videos are more likely to use old technology. So think about if you want to learn Stata, are you learning the most recent Stata? If you want to do something in Python or in ODK, are you really getting the best, greatest, most efficient, most recent way of doing things? Check that date. And finally, remember that most videos are short. Granted, some are longer, like this one, but most videos can be 1 to 5 minutes, maybe 10. So think about just taking the risk of watching one or watching a part of one. If it's not helpful, okay, then stop it. But maybe there's something in there that might help you with your learning goals. So if we go to youtube.com, let's say we want to learn about ArcGIS basics. We type that in, and already YouTube gives us different suggestions of what we might be interested in. We could click on any of those. But if we look at the full search results, you can see that we have many different videos that talk about ArcGIS basics, ArcGIS basic tools for beginners, which is a quick 10-minute video, for example, with 3,500 views. We can also look at a different series, right? So here we have ArcGIS for beginners, and there are 69 different videos. We don't know if they're good yet, but we can click on them and start to go through. We can look again, remember, for the dates and for the number of hits and for the levels. Maybe this GIS Fundamentals course might be interesting to us. It has 35,000 views, but it's from 6 years ago, so it might be using outdated ArcGIS versions. Many different options come up, so it's up to you to click through to see what's a bit more recent and still enjoyed by many, and to just start watching the video. You can skip around, see if it gets to things that are useful for you, and at any time, if it doesn't seem useful anymore, stop and search again. But what if it's not the basics that we're looking for? We want to really go into the way that we'll be using ArcGIS in our work with PMA. So there's one skill in the IDEP that is ArcGIS for GPS data processing. Remember, PMA will do it a certain way, and there are SOPs, there are memos, there are manuals and guidelines for that, but you still need to learn the basic skill. So here we learn about importing and exporting GPS data in ArcGIS. There's a video about GPS data processing by someone who does GPS surveying, looking at adding a GPX file into ArcGIS, all sorts of things. Maybe we want to think about how to use Stata in this process, creating maps in Stata, using GPS and bringing the data into it, statistical spatial data analysis with ArcGIS, location tracking. There are so many of these. So look at the year, the date. It shouldn't be too further. If you can get something from the past year, that's probably best, because it will likely be using the latest or nearly the latest version of the software. Look for something that has a very high number of views, and then just click on it and see where it goes. Skip around a little bit. If it seems interesting, start watching it. This is a 7-minute video. What do you have to lose? Okay, now it's time to try it out. Pause this video to give you time to search for a YouTube video that could help you in your learning. First, you're going to select one skill that you've targeted in your IDEP. This could be the same skill you used for the previous exercise or a different skill, up to you. Then go to YouTube and identify at least one interesting video for that skill that you've targeted and watch the first 2 minutes of it. Ask yourself if it may be valuable. Remember, when you're looking for a valuable video, you want to look at the date, the number of views, and the description to see if it's going to be useful for you. Then finally, share the video that you found with another learner on your team. And when you're ready, hit the play button to continue. We all use Google, but it's great to keep using Google when we're learning. You can use it for a mix of everything. Maybe it's for some small punctual learning. You need to just learn this one thing really quickly. Check it out on Google. Maybe it's for troubleshooting. All of this data manuals are on online, and you can find them in Google. All sorts of other things. You can look at forums, guides. It might even send you back to a YouTube video or to a MOOC. Google will also help you with identifying even more resources. So the MOOC, the YouTube, anything else that might help you, go to Google. So I've looked through the TCB library, maybe I've looked at some videos, or maybe I'm just lost on where to start. So I go to Google, and let's say that I want to learn on skill U4. The ability to run and interpret basic tabulations or statistics using t-tests, ANOVA, etc. So I want to learn how to run an ANOVA test in Stata, and here Google is giving me some different videos to watch, 2 of which are from StataCorp, the citation from this data manual that I can look through. It also gives me suggestions of other questions that have been asked. How do you run an ANOVA test? How do you analyze one-way ANOVA results? So here I can keep going through. Stata Help seems like it might be good. From EDU is usually a school or a university. So these are all different resources that are coming to me from Google, and just like with YouTube and MOOCs, I need to be discerning, but I can try it out and see if it's useful for me. But just like YouTube, just like anything else I'm going to be using, I want to make sure that it's recent enough, that it has a lot of views, so maybe this is a very bad choice. You can continue to go through and look for things, and remember, you can always go back to the TCB library and see from the skill set if there are any skills, any different tools, such as the PMA qualitative folder in the Dropbox. You can look through all of these different resources in addition to Google to combine what the internet has to teach you and also what the PMA team and their documents and their specific ways of doing things using these skills. Now it's time to try it out. I know you've done a Google search before, but let's think about this Google search specifically in terms of the skills that you've targeted in your IDEP. So pause this video to give you time to Google search for resources that could help you in your learning. Start by selecting one skill that you've targeted in your IDEP. And again, this can be the same skill as the previous exercises or a different skill. Then go to Google and identify at least one interesting resource for your skill. Remember to be discerning. This isn't just any resource. Anyone can put something up on the web. You want something that is at your level, that comes from a credible source, and that seems like something that could help you to learn this skill. If your results seem not so useful, try either being more specific, adding in more terms about what you're looking for, or being more general. Maybe you're so specific that there aren't enough resources out there. So play around with the terms. Do you have the full term of the skill that you've targeted in your IDEP? Do you have just certain keywords? Play around with that until you get at least one interesting resource for your skill. And then finally, share this resource you found with another learner on your team. And when you've done that, hit the play button to continue. Remember that people are resources too. We tend to forget this, but in the IDEP, we have this entire section on what is the role of the whomever in the learning. What's the role of you, the learner? What's the role of your PI or supervisor? What's the role of your TU country lead? And what is the role of other learning support team members? So you have colleagues, you have other people who are learning this skill or who have learned it already who can support you. You might even have other colleagues, other travelers on learning trips who have gone to your same destination before, who have learned that skill. You can ask them for advice and maybe even support. Maybe you have a colleague who's going to that learning destination now who has the same or a similar skill that they would like to learn. Work with them. Ask them for advice on what they've done so far, on what resources they've used, on what's challenging for them. Ask them for support. Maybe take a course with them or share resources with them. Consider traveling together, as it may be, or at least checking in with them along the way. There's also your TU country leads. We have this in the PMA TCB library. We call them skills custodians. So skills custodians are TU country leads who are the point of contact For a different skill or skill set, like we saw in the TCB library review earlier, ask a skills custodian for help with that skill. Maybe you feel like you don't have access to the right resources. Maybe you feel like you don't have enough resources. Reach out to you skills custodian for that skill and ask them for help. Maybe they'll have a resource for you. Maybe they can help troubleshoot with you directly or look over something you've been working on and give you feedback. Maybe they can't do either, but they probably at least know someone else who can, and they can help connect you with other people who have the skills or the resources you're looking for. This system of referrals, asking someone to help you and having them help at least to connect you to someone else, this system of referrals, it's a great system when we're learning.